I'm giving this class because I want to ensure that everybody is properly prepared for the holidays. So I want to make sure that you have the proper background. And the key, of course, is always to understand what is the historical roots and the underlying meaning of the holidays. So that's what we're going to go through. We'll start with Christmas, and then we'll run straight through Christmas until we get to New Year's, run through New Year's, and hopefully we'll be able to pull this whole thing off in the amount of time that we have available. Popular myth puts Jesus' birth on December 25th in the year 1 AD or 1 CE. That's when supposedly, at least according to people in the streets, that's when Jesus was born. The reality. The New Testament gives absolutely no date whatsoever for Jesus' birth, not a day or a year. In fact, the gospel that was written, the earliest of all the gospels, was Mark, which they say was written around 65 CE, presents us with an adult Jesus, implying that in early Christianity there was absolutely no interest whatsoever in Jesus' birth. And in fact, even the later Gospels that do mention Jesus' birth don't say anything whatsoever about the day he was born, as if that was not a significant date to the early Christians. Why are there people who think that in fact he was born in the year 1 CE, 1 AD? Where did they get that idea? So it was actually a simple mathematical error that was made by a Scythian monk. The fellow's name was Dionysius Exiguus. And when he added up the numbers, I'm going to give you the whole calculation on this sheet, but when he added up the numbers, he just added wrong. And you'll see exactly where the mistake is. And because he added wrong, he ended up being off by 4 years. But definitely, according to the Catholic numbers, Jesus was not born in the year 1 AD. He was born in around the year 3 BCE, right? According to the numbers that are provided by the Catholic Church. And in fact, the authorities within the Catholic Church believe that he was not born in 1 AD. The official oral tradition of the Catholics, the Jerome Biblical Commentary, has an essay by a Cardinal Fitzmyer. Fitzmyer is one of the most influential people in the English-speaking world who speaks for the Pope. And Fitzmyer writes as follows, quote, he says, "Though the year of Jesus' birth is not reckoned with certainty, the birth definitely did not occur in AD 1. The Christian era is supposed to have its starting point in the year of Jesus' birth is based on a miscalculation introduced circa 533 CE by Dionysius Exiguus." So first of all, you should just know the year is not year 1. In other words, when the Christians count years, they are not counting from Jesus' birth. Jesus was probably born around 3 BCE. Okay. Point number 2. What about the day? In other words, the calendar date. According to the Christians, when was he born? So the earliest document that we have is from around 243 CE, written in North Africa. And this Catholic document, this original church document, called the De Pascha Computus, it puts Jesus' birthday on March the 28th. Okay? The earliest Catholic documents we have claim that was the day that he was born. The truth is that the Catholic Church was not confident in that, and that's why when Kelemen, who was the Bishop of Alexandria, died around 215 CE, when he made his claim about when Jesus was born, instead of March 28th, he put it on November the 18th. Fitzmyer, this cardinal with the Catholic Church today, says they were both wrong. Both of those are based on miscalculations. Really, Jesus was born on September the 11th, 3 BCE. So however you want to cut it, March 28th, November the 18th, September the 11th, he definitely was not born on December the 25th at all. That's certain. At least that's the claims of the Catholic Church. And the truth is, there are no serious Catholic theologians or Protestant theologians who believe that he was born December 25th. Everybody knows that's not his birthday. That is the day when Christians commemorate his birth, when they remember that he was born, and they celebrate his birth. But that is definitely not the day on which he was born according to the Catholic Church. So if we're going to be celebrating, at least we should know what we're celebrating, right? We are not celebrating his birthday, because December 25th, according to nobody, is his birthday. Okay. How did December 25th come to be celebrated? So the story is as follows. During pre-Christian Roman pagan times, there was a festival that lasted from December the 17th through December the 25th. During this 8-day festival, the Roman courts shut down. Why? Because the way the festival was celebrated, this festival was called Saturnalia. The way the festival was celebrated was that everything was permitted. There were absolutely no rules. In fact, if you damaged somebody or murdered somebody during this 8-day festival, you were not held responsible. You were completely off the hook. Why? Because that was the festival. So the courts shut down during this 8-day period because there was no purpose in then staying open. You could never be prosecuted for anything you did during these 8 days. At the beginning of the festival, the Roman pagans appointed from, quote-unquote, the enemies of the Roman people. Each Roman community would pick one person to be the enemy of the Roman people. By the way, you can imagine what sort of people were chosen for this position. In other words, who were the Romans really opposed to in those days? So they would choose, every Roman community would choose one person and name that person the Lord of Misrule. On the 8th day, they would then take this person and they would murder him in a horrific fashion. I will not describe what they did to him in public. I will just tell you that it was very slow and there was not much left of his body at the end. So it was a 7-day holiday followed by the 8th day where there was this human sacrifice. And that completed the festival. The festival of Saturnalia, right? December the 17th through the 25th. Okay, now, when Rome fell, the Saturnalia survived. So the Greek historian Lucian, he describes exactly how the Greeks observed the Saturnalia. And he says like this. He says, this is in a dialogue he wrote called Saturnalia. He says, in addition to human sacrifice, there were observance of the following customs. 1, widespread intoxication, especially on the concluding day of the festival, December 25th. You see, some things never change. Going from house to house while singing in the streets naked. By the way, that's a precursor of caroling. Rape and other sexual license, and consuming human-shaped biscuits. What's that a precursor of? Gingerbread man, exactly. Now, what happened was, the early Christian church they were trying to proselytize, they were trying to convert pagans, and they had a theology that it was acceptable to import pagan observances if, in exchange for that, you could extract belief in Jesus. And there's many examples throughout history of how the Christians just brought pagan observances into Christianity in order to bring Christians in. But one of the more colorful examples is when they imported the Saturnalia in the 4th century. In the 4th century, they decided they were going to bring the Saturnalia into Christianity in order to bring the Saturnalia cult worshippers into the religion as well. The problem is that when they imported the Saturnalia, they did not change its style of observance. And therefore, Christianity now had, as part of it, this 8-day period of absolute, uncontrolled wildness. There's a professor at the University of Massachusetts by the name of Stephen Nissenbaum. He explains the following phenomena that took place when the Christians imported the Saturnalia. I'm going to quote from him. He says, quote, in return for ensuring massive observance of the anniversary of the Savior's birth by assigning it to this resonant date, December 25th, the church, for its part, tacitly agreed to allow the holiday to be celebrated more or less the way it had always been. The earliest Christmas holidays were celebrated by drinking, sexual indulgence, singing naked in the streets, a precursor of modern caroling, etc. So it turns out when the Christians imported Saturnalia, they did it wholesale, and the entire holiday came into Christianity. Originally, it was just an accommodation. They just imported it in order to bring in the pagans. But of course, after it's been part of the Christian tradition for a long time, so it actually started to take on Christian significance. Initially, there were some Christians who didn't buy it because they knew that December 25th has absolutely nothing to do with Jesus' birth. It's a joke. So for example, you've all heard of the Puritans. Remember Cotton Mather and Increase Mather? These guys were leading Puritan theologians that were responsible for settling the Americas. So Increase Mather wrote from Boston in 1687, quote, this is the leader of the Puritan community, quote, the early Christians who first observed the Nativity on December 25th did not do so thinking that Christ was born in that month, but because the heathens' Saturnalia was at that time kept in Rome, and they were willing to have those pagan holidays metamorphosed into Christian ones. Nevertheless, the Puritans were totally opposed to Christmas, and in fact, between the years 1659 and 1681, if anyone was caught in Massachusetts keeping Christmas, they were thrown into jail. It was illegal to keep Christmas in Puritan America. Absolutely forbidden, because it was heresy. What are you celebrating December 25th for? That's a pagan holiday. It has nothing to do with Christianity. Until today, there are groups in Europe that do not celebrate December 25th as Jesus' birthday, because everybody knows this is not his birthday.